Maybe she did.
25
They always started later. That was always the problem, because you guys had to wait for us and people to join.
After the groundbreaking.
Yeah.
We had the rain unfrozen snow.
No, we're in.
You're in.
There's another thing that's budget that we're just getting started on.
You should have your final budget approval meeting Thursday, right? Wednesday.
Wednesday, and then all the amendments are due next week or
Yeah,
something
all
like
the
that.
amendments are due next year.
Remember those days? Not very fond, but I remember it.
There's been meetings there.
And then these guys who try to buy it by asking for money for it. Gosh, I'm not sure. I read for anything.
I think the O'Connor said it's okay.
Judge, how are you?
Good, Johnny.
This is not a violation of anybody's Bill of Rights.
It's quite ironic. We worship in the courthouse. And the church is being used as a Revolutionary War hospital.
Did she ever get back to you?
Not to me, no. We got trapped somewhere.
Yeah. Well, I think she just, she didn't want to say no, but she didn't want to.
Yeah, that's all right.
I'm sorry.
I got one.
Okay.
One out of two.
All right. Where's Eddie?
Ed's on the phone.
Ed's on the phone?
Yeah. He's in some traffic.
What? In the Lehigh Valley traffic? You gotta be kidding me.
It does happen.
Traffic in the parking lot today.
How about it? Little paving going
I
on.
have to tell you, Tuesday night I went to the Philadelphia airport, pick up my son and his family to come in. And I parked in a cell phone lot. The plane got in about 5 minutes to midnight, which was on schedule. He called me. I said, okay, we'll write over 40 minutes to get out of the cell phones, to get out of the cell phone.
Just based on volume.
We have a road going out. The road narrows and it feeds into the main flow of traffic into the
Oh,
terminal.
I see.
And it was, trying to get in there, 40 minutes to get out of the cell phone.
Wow.
Terrible.
Yeah.
Then yesterday I took the other set of
Man, I like to hear
kids
that.
back to Newark. Newark was a lot more manageable. Of course, I was just dropping in. I would always fly out of Newark over to Philadelphia. Particularly because I was in Easton. That's been my experience. It was $300 less expensive to come to Philadelphia from Minneapolis. So that makes it good. Enough to make a difference.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the November meeting of the Lehigh Northampton Airport Authority. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to start the meeting. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. All right, so that roll call, please.
Yes, sir. Brian Dames. Chuck Diacon.
Here.
Mike Dowd.
Here.
Frank Facciano.
Here.
Glenn Geisinger. John Hayes.
Here.
Larry Hemberger.
He's on the phone, right?
Here.
Ed Lozano.
Present.
Jeff Batskin.
Here.
Glenn Reedman.
Present.
Ted Rosenberger.
Here.
Mike Schwer.
Here.
Matt Turk,
Here?
Chris Worley, Tara Zirinsky.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Thank you. Okay, public comment. I understand we have two gentlemen here to speak to us. Please come up to the podium, and typically we allot 3 minutes, gentlemen, per speaker, so please state your name and the organization that you're with, and welcome.
How's everybody doing today? My name is John Stankwitz. I'm currently a striking worker for Kings of Rebar. We're a company based out in Pottstown, PA. We're here today because we have some issues that we'd like to bring to the table. Currently, we're on strike against this company because, you know, they provide us no health care whatsoever. We're just tired of the physical and verbal abuse. Myself personally, I've encountered numerous accounts of physical abuse, including a foreman actually slamming down and choking a 19-year-old kid, an employee. You know, and first of all, it's no matter who you are, it's unprofessional and that's a lawsuit. Well, we're here to ask that, see it through that they are not employed for any projects coming up on the airport, because, you know, I guarantee you guys don't want anything to do with that, any lawsuits or anything like that. We also have no safety or basic training whatsoever. So guys are pretty much running around, not knowing what to do, getting hurt on the job. And also when we get hurt, our employers themselves call the guys, tell them that they don't get, or tell the hospital that they're not hurt at work, which is illegal. So it's kind of missing them at a workers' comp. You know, and all we ask is we want them to take care of their guys, and, you know, for their contractors to stop temporarily doing business with them until they signed a collective bargaining agreement with the ironworkers. And, you know, we're just tired of the abuse and want to stop. But are there any questions or concerns?
Anyone? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I also have a couple white papers and handles if you guys don't mind taking them.
Hi, my name is Greg Lakeup, and I'm on strike against the company Kings of Rebar, of which I was fired from. I'm one of the guys that did get hurt at work, and I was called, and when I called my boss and told him what happened, he said, make sure you don't tell them that it happened at work. So when I tried to pursue unemployment and workers' comp, I got the runaround, and eventually they told me that they couldn't take me back, and I lost my apartment. I have 3 kids and a wife, and I had to relocate, which was really difficult. And part of me getting hurt was unsafe working conditions. We're working in the rain, in a pool where the dig out was wrong, and I fell through the mat. And there's just a lot of things that happen like this. There's been cave-ins on various jobs where people have almost gotten hurt. People aren't taught how to rig properly, and we've had mats fall on people, and thankfully they were okay. They were injured, but nobody died. We are often physically and verbally abused, which lowers worker morale, and it decreases efficiency and productivity. You know, I've seen guys get thrown, I've seen guys get hit, and oftentimes it's by the boss to younger men that are, 18, 19, young kids, And this unsafe and negative work environment is not something that anyone wants to deal with, be it us, the workers, or, the other contractors. And the company that has been bringing Kings of Rebar onto these jobs, such as the one in Bethlehem with Majestic, is Engelman's. And we have asked them to stop doing business with Kings of Rebar to no avail. We are still currently bannering down there in Bethlehem, and we just hope that, in talking to you guys and us bannering, it brings awareness to what is going on, that this stuff stops happening, and that maybe other contractors are reviewed. I would also ask that you guys please consider putting responsible contractor language in the bid documents. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Greg. Appreciate your time. Appreciate you bringing it to our attention.
Thank you.
Eddie, good morning, afternoon.
Good morning, good afternoon.
Both. Okay, any other public comment? Sir?
Good afternoon to the board. My name is Joshua Gans. I'm an attorney. I represent Chrisman Enterprises, also known as Kings of Rebar. I'd like to just point out that everything that you just heard is defamatory. We're dealing with them in a number of jurisdictional issues, and we're prepared to provide to the board in writing what our response to that is, but take it for what it is and take it with a grain of salt that they've been following our people around and making these false accusations all over the area. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else, public comment? Okay, seeing none, then let's move on to item 4 is approval of the minutes. May I, yes, sir.
Sure, before we move on, just have a question about the contracts that we have with contractors. Judge, I don't know if you can just shed light on this just from a top line perspective, but do we have any, protective clauses that ensure that contractors are in good standing and taking care of their employees within the laws of the state, of the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and federal? Or is that something that is deferred to the contractor themselves?
Each contract that we would have would be with the developer rather than with the firm referred to here. The firm referred to here, as I understand it, is a subcontractor. And in fact, they are frequently a subcontractor of a subcontractor. And then there's a general contractor over them. That's the general contractor is the firm that the developer deals with. So in fact, the authority doesn't have a direct contractual relationship with subcontractors such as we're involved with here.
Okay, that clarifies that, thank you. So just understand, this firm is a subcontractor of a general contractor who presumably works for a developer that we have a contractual obligation with.
We have a relationship with the developer, but there's no direct contractual relationship between the airport authority and a firm such as Kings of Rebar or any other subcontractor. They are retained by the general contractor with whom we don't have a direct relationship either. We deal only with the firm that we enter into the agreement of sale with,
Okay.
or the option with.
Great, thanks for clarifying, appreciate it.
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Eddie. Okay, approval of the October 30th, 2018 minutes. May I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Second? Second. All in favor?
Just one
Yes, sir.
correction before we go to vote. On page 4866, at the top, the treasurer's report, it refers to the financial results for the month of September. That should be year-to-date September.
Did you all that? Okay, thanks, John. Any other comments? Okay, may I have a vote, please? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you. Okay, committee reports. John, treasurer's report.
Yep, thank you, Mr. Chair. Everyone has a copy of the treasurer's report for the period ended October 2018. We'll have it up on the screen in 1 second. For the month of October, another good month. The organization continues to turn in strong results. Net revenues were 8% up month to date, and net income $308,000 favorable versus budget for the period. Also continued strong expense control. You see expenses came in at just under $1.7 million versus $1.8 million in the budget and $1.8 million last year as well. Non-aviation revenue continues to be strong. Aviation services is up 21% versus budget, and that's purely traffic driven. Parking revenue is up due to the increase in passenger traffic, which we'll talk about shortly. And monthly expenses, again, were 10% favorable. Go to the next slide. We'll talk about year-to-date numbers, get into a little bit more detail. Year-to-date, we're up 6%, and net income is up $3.2 million, both favorable against budget. You can see the numbers there, resulting in a net income of $3.6 million for the period. What's driving the increase in net revenue, 38% of the increased net income is due to increases in non-aviation parking and aviation services. That's directly related to the increase in traffic that we've seen at the airport. Airfield and terminal reflect the adjusted accrual for the 2000 airline settlement as well. That's important to note. We have that factored in, where in prior years we typically do that as a catch-up towards the end of the year. Decrease in expenses is driven primarily by salary reduction, or salary coming in lower due to open headcounts, about 1.4 million. Lower professional service fees were 181,000 favorable, and contract services 167,000 favorable as well. Also, non-operating revenue remains strong. That's the recurring, non-recurring revenue that Todd refers to in terms of land sale easements and also insurance reimbursements for the Wiley roof damage. So, talk about passenger traffic. As you can see, and everyone gets Colin's email blasts on this, it's great information to see. We are year-to-date up almost 15% over the prior year. We're also seeing strong growth both in Allegiant and in our legacy carriers. The Allegiant traffic is important. Just a point of reference, Allegiant had added routes back in spring, early spring if I remember correctly. The original date was through May. That was extended through November. Now I believe it's open-ended, and those routes we expect to continue for the foreseeable future. So that has resulted in a significant increase in the Allegiant business. We're also happy to see the legacy carriers doing more out of this airport. Tom, I'm sure you can talk a little bit more about that during your report, what you see is driving that, but we do expect that to continue, which is good to see as well. And then I actually talked about that slide already, so we can go to the next one. And then finally, our cash flow projections really want to focus on one number on this slide to keep the board lasered in on it, and that's the days cash on hand after contingency. It's the last line on the report. We're targeting 90 days cash on hand. We've set an informal policy minimum of 60. You can see for November, we're projecting 84.5. Drops to a low of 71.4 days cash on hand in April, but then rebounds as our projections show in October to 92.3 days. It's important. We don't want to go back to the days of yore where we were 5 to 10 days cash on hand. We want to make sure that we keep sufficient cash on hand to fund the operations of the airport. So with that, I'll give it over to Todd. Anything, Todd, you'd want to add?
The one thing I wanted to mention for sure was, and you'll catch it out on the P&L when we talked about our year-to-date depreciation. Our year-to-date depreciation is 4.1 million, and that's really our continued investment in our infrastructure. By comparison, you have last year at 3.3, but by comparison, in 2013, that number was 2.3 million. So you can see our continued investment in our infrastructure, and our net numbers are still going up in spite of it. So that's a good number for us. That means we're investing in ourselves, and our profits are still going up. The other thing I wanted to point out is on the cash flow is, one of the things we did is we increased we started accruing our pension payout. We have our pension payout that we do in October. We started accruing them each and every month this year, so you won't see those big swings, but you'll see it in the cash. We had some early payments on our contract payments. They were like basically a day early on the end of the month, and some of our insurance payments were done a little earlier this year than last year. But we'll catch up by the end of the year. But even with that, our cash on hand is still a really good number. So with that, that's pretty much all I wanted to add to it.
Stuff.
Any other questions, comments regarding the treasurer's report for John or Todd?
Todd and Tom, I have a question regarding the expenses. First of all, wonderful job over the last few years managing the expenses. It's incredible how you've managed it at or below budget, so that's extraordinarily great financial discipline. We've kind of had a lot of months where we reference open headcount being part of the savings. Are there any critical positions at this point that you feel we need to fill, or are those just general line positions, let's just say that, it's just turnover, it's the marketplace, et cetera? Just curious in terms of the senior staff at this point.
Yeah, no, I think the senior staff is staffed appropriately. I think, there certainly were some contingencies, as we've talked about when we do some of our budgeting, having some contingency in there. Depending on growth in operation, we know that some of the operation is easy to determine staffing levels, and other parts are very difficult. So based on what we see, flight schedules, other things for staffing purposes, we've been able to manage with the staff levels that we had, and I think we've done that efficiently, and that's been a great thing.
Okay, wonderful. So one other thing would be then with the 3.2 million year to date, what's your projection, Todd, if you had to just guess, at the end of the year, we're running extraordinarily high versus our budget, and I know it's backloaded, et cetera, but do you foresee any significant changes? We only have 2 months left. What do you kind of, Todd,
Our
project?
projection through, it was interesting because we're kind of like maybe a month behind. We did a projection through September, which shows about 2.9, and that didn't include October. So we're probably going to be slightly, I would say 3.1, 3.2 in that range for the year, even with some of the backloaded expenses.
Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks, Eddie. Any other comments?
Oh, and one thing I wanted to mention as well, if you'll notice on the cash, we did include the 2017 benchmark. I don't know if we got those latest numbers, so I did include them in the cash compared to other airports. I just got that in, so that's a good thing.
Thanks, Todd. Okay, if there's no other comments, I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the treasurer's report.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
What's this?
Opposed?
There you go.
Okay, motion carries. Thanks, John. Thanks, Todd. All right, we're going to jump into business development and finance. Is Matt here yet? Matt's here, okay.
He cut his hair, we couldn't recognize him.
Although it's still
Matt
November,
and
huh?
Tough crowd. Matt and Mike, it's the ball's in your court. I'll let you run through these, and we're going to be going out after the third item, after the air cargo sinkhole repair item. We'll go into executive session to discuss the Rockefeller real estate issues, just an FYI. But gents, you have it.
Okay. First item that we dealt with in the joint committee meeting was the approval of the 2019 operating budget. And Todd, if you want to take us through that.
Sure, I'll walk you through this.
Probably best.
Again, this is kind of recap. As you remember, we went in September, we went through the assumptions, and then in our last meeting, we kind of updated that. And this is the presentation that we did at our finance committee meeting. Again, we started out, as we talked about last month, we wanted to be fiscally responsible, strategic, and manage our expectations. That's always how we start out. We start out, trying to manage the minimum to run the airport, and we kind of go from there. These two are always conflicting. This one here, and then also reinvesting in ourselves up here. Because, as you'll see, if you look in our rates and charges, we're actually charging money for our infrastructure. I mean, if you go back a few years ago, we had the higher rates, and we weren't charging for capital. So now we've got those rates coming down, and we're able to charge the capital. But again, our rates were so high, we couldn't even charge them. So it's a balance, because obviously if you're spending money, you can't keep your rates as low as possible. But we try to do our best with those two. It's a revenue-based budget. I don't want to say where we were years ago, but let's just say it's revenue-based. 7 cargo flights, including FedEx. Goes through that. It's always consistent with our latest agreements. As you'll see here, our $802 million of landed weight. That's really key for because our landed fee is based on landed weight. It's not based on passengers, it's based on landed weight. So that's how they pay for those items. And then our passengers, enplanements, 408 is what we're estimating, and we had 298 as of September of last month. So, right. Again, going through all of our assumptions, obviously, whenever I start out with these budgets, I really focus on the personnel, because that's the biggest cost. At 60% of our budget, we have our collective bargaining agreements that we have to meet those agreements. One of the things that we're trying to do is be forward thinking as far as our benefits. If you see what we've done as far as our pension and as far as our health savings accounts and high deductible plans, we're really somewhat cutting edge for a municipality. Our health savings account, we're at a $1,500. We went to a $1,500 for a non-union, and we just had our firefighters cut over. But with our Healthy Rewards program, employees can get all of that money in their health savings account if they do certain things to make themselves healthy. And again, healthy is a win-win, because for every dollar you spend on Healthy Rewards, you save $3 down the road. So that's where we're trying to save our money, get our employees healthier, and ultimately down the road it'll save us money, because that's a big ticket item. And I might have mentioned this about 4 or 5 zillion times already. The big item for us this year was no rebate on our self-insured medical. We're self-insured, so we fund the maximum, and then the following year, if we get any money back, that goes as a negative in the following year. We had a $400,000 surplus that we received in both 17 and 18. So last 2 years, we got $400,000 back, which showed as a negative expense. Next year, no can do. Plus, we got hit with a 10% increase. But these are all the increases that we have in there based on the collective bargaining agreements and what we're doing as far as salary. And again, for us, a big item that we put in here is snow. We had that big snow event. That was expensive for us. We had a lot of folks out there. Hopefully, we won't have too much. Maybe I'm on the Donald Trump side and not believing all these snow and all this stuff, so maybe we'll be okay. But obviously, at an airport, snow is a big deal. Go to the next slide. Again, I mentioned a high dollar deductible plan in our CBA. Nice thing we wanted to do for our employees is we were able to keep our medical contributions consistent for our non-union. So even though we cut back, just to give you a little bit of heads up on our high deductible, we cut back on the money that you got just for showing up, and you have to do a few things to get that money, but they're not big challenges. And again, we want our employees to be healthy. It's a win-win. The next slide. Again, we base our new employees on employees and children. Workman's comp's a big number for us, 4.7% of payroll. That's a 10% increase. And then we self-insure our unemployment. That's one of the numbers we talked about that might be a little bit on the heavy side. But again, our number is probably about 2 gross. And then we get some, it goes down from there. So again, that's a conservative number, but we put it in there. Slide. Again, here's my 210 surplus from last year. It's a negative number, and we got a 10.1 for our pension. We did eliminate the pension for new hires, so that's saving us money down the road. Again, we want to take care of our employees. We want employees to feel good about working here, but we also want to make sure we can afford to pay for the things that we promised them long term. Again, other budget assumptions, you get in the last year's budget. We started out with the 243. We're through September. I mentioned this to Eddie when he talked about 2.9. And that was before we had October, so call it 3.1. Again, debt service, really important. Banks really focus on that number, 1.57. We're not trying to get rich, but at the same token, we're at 1.58. Again, I keep mentioning the snow. That's a big deal around here. Next one. Rates and charges. We're going to show our landing rate coming down 2 cents. Again, going down in the right direction. Terminal rate goes up about 3.5. That does not include the per turn. The per turn is pretty flat, which is what Allegiant pays on. And if you think about the terminal rate, that's also, for example, the rental cars pay for that. TSA pays for that. All those pay for the terminal rate. So it's not just the airlines. It's everybody pays for that terminal square footage rate. Next slide. Again, this is kind of breaking down where we are, and you can kind of see 1.6. Keep going. Again, slide it down, keep going. You mentioned over here. Keep going. And then we're down to 893 versus 292, which was through September. Slide to the next one. And I just wanted to break that down because if you think about, hey, you're at 293, how do you get to 8 something? So I wanted to break that down so really people could really follow it all the way through. We started out projected 2923. The additional revenue, I said it was 1604, but remember we have our settlement in there. So we don't budget a settlement, so the two of those together. And remember we're doing that extra pension payment next month. So that's not in the budget. We start working down new positions, and we did move them back. We had some discussion about some of the dates that Mr. Lozano had suggested. We did do that. Again, big number here. No surplus, 410,000. No easements. Those are extraordinary items, not there. Market adjustments, you see everybody's coming in this area, so we have to make some adjustments to keep our employees and to stay competitive. Cost of livings and increase in medical costs. And you get down to 192 in the subtotal. Next slide. Then you start saying that annualized salaries. What that is if you started in July, now we got to pay your whole salary for the whole year. And you walk through all the numbers. Again, this is our reinvesting in ourselves. dues and subscriptions are, our latest software, things that we have like that. For example, latest ABM, we call it our
Business knowledge, airport IQ.
Airport IQ, all those kind of things that we use software specific to the airport. And again, this is us rebuilding our infrastructure. Think about having the old version of Excel, and then you said, hey, I got to upgrade, it ain't cheap. So that's kind of in these dues and subscriptions. And then professional services, again, as we start doing all this work around the airport, that's all the stuff that's in there, and our contract services. Again, those are things that we have to do as we invest in all of our work that we're doing around the airport. Extra depreciation, staff training, we want to invest in our folks. That's key. All this new technology, got to invest in them. Additional advertising, some of those are just incentives for new flights that we have to pay for. So those are in there. And you kind of run down, and then you get down to this $893. It goes fast, doesn't it? Sort of like your tax return. You're like, hey, I'm going to spend this, and it's all gone. So go to the next slide. And again, this is our comparison of cash flows. The biggest difference is here. Last year, we had 9.2 million. We're starting out with 20.8. So we've already secured a lot of the cash, but we're going to spend it next year. So we're starting out with that there. You'll see the debt service, because now we have the debt service on the hangar. That's in here. We have the bond money. That's a big number, because the bank's asking us, when are you going to spend down that bond money that we got in the 2015 projects. We took out $7 million in 2015 for construction projects, and we have $4.3 million left, and which we had planned to use, and we're planning on using that in 2018. Excuse me, 2019. Next slide. So that. And go through, this is the big number. This is what we're planning on spending, $39.2 million. That's a lot of money that we're spending on our capital stuff. And a lot of that's the hangar, things we talked about, some big projects, the runway. But again, 39 million is 39 million. That's a big swing. We're getting a lot of that back from grants. And again, one of the things that we added, which from help from Mr. Lozano and Mr. Hayes, was, hey, give us some contingency that we didn't have this year. Over and above our bond reserve, what happens if, we give a little bit of cushion here and then we put it into cash. So that's 5% of operating expenses, $1.1 million. You give us a little flow. And again, even with that, we're showing 84.5 days cash on hand.
Hey, Todd, quick question on that. So that additional cash, are we investing it? Are we holding it in cash?
It's just additional cash. So if you go in here, all these things are earning some interest. They're fairly liquid, but you're just saying, hey, how much of this can you spend? And if you're off, you've got that much cushion. So these are all liquid. We still have the 10 million, but we have to hold this much here. We haven't separated.
Yeah, I'm just assuming that we're going to keep it in either cash or short-term instruments, and
Yeah,
hopefully making a
most of
little
them
bit of
is-
money if
yeah.
we're
in
not spending
the 2% range, give or take, around there right now. So, but that's a good point. It is fairly liquid, so that's why we have it as a contingency reserve. And next slide. So that. And again, we'll put it in here. I mentioned this before. You can see that this is our landing fee, 4.72. Our numbers are improving. This is versus some of the other airports. Harrisburg, 3.78, 3.98. But again, if you see what's going on over the last couple of years, our number is coming down and their numbers are going up. So even though our number is high, even if we can hold it there, eventually they'll catch up to us. Hopefully.
Hey, Todd, this is a great chart because it's comparing us to the competitive set. I think, if I recall correctly, some of these other airports are subsidized, right?
Yes, correct.
By other local or state agencies.
Correct.
Or have different services provided at no cost to the airport.
Correct. So that's a pretty competitive number given the situation we're in. And like you said, we're continuously going down.
And that's why we're in the red. So we're trying to make sure we move in the right direction. But I want you to mark out, this is something that Darren pointed out. This is 3.78 here. Now go to the next slide. That's Harrisburg. 15.7. How can they do that? Maybe they're charging stuff that, not the right way. Maybe they're charging stuff to, they're not charging all their costs to the airfield. Maybe they're charging them in other areas because overall their costs are higher than ours. But again, it's all in the costing. But again, you can see our costs come down. We were at 16.96, I believe, last year? 9.4. So that's a big jump going down. So that's really a positive thing. And again, for us, a big thing is the amount of space that we use. We're about 40% capacity. So if we were to get to 80% capacity, that number would be basically half. Because a lot of this, as we mentioned earlier, was to maintain the minimum of the airport. You got to maintain the whole airport. And if you have 40% capacity, you still got to maintain the whole airport. Next slide. And I think that's it. Any questions?
Yeah, just a quick question on the, I'll put quotes around it, the self-funded medical insurance plan.
Yes.
So do we have some sort of reinsurance that kicks in if we use up all the funds allocated to our plan? Is that the way that works? Or?
We are self-funded medical, so we have reinsurance when you talk about, we have aggregate protection overall at 15%. So if our expected claims are $100, we pay at 115. So if we go over 115, that's the maximum we can pay. We also have individual protection where if one person goes over the threshold, we have protection, I believe it's at 55,000.
Okay, so
That's what you would call your reinsurance. So you're covered with true insurance on those two buckets. But the rest of the pieces below 115% is ours. Okay, our risk. And then obviously if an individual is less than 55,000 is our risk. The reason you want to go self-insured, number one, you start to see all those costs really, particularly your fixed costs, become much more visible. And you've got a lot more say in managing your costs long-term. Because again, if we have a really good year, because we fund at 115%, the expected number is 100%. So in theory, we should be getting a refund every year. But what happens is every 3-4 years, you have a bad year. And this is kind of what happened with us this year, and you don't get any money back. But like I mentioned, the last few years, we got $400,000 back. If we were fully insured and paid at 100%, we wouldn't be getting that much money. The net would be less than us being self-funded. Does that answer your question?
It does, thank you.
I had a question in the statement. We made this year we have the litigation with Allentown over the stormwater tax.
Correct.
We made the payment in protest this year.
Yes.
Do we have a payment that if it got to that point, we would make again in protest built into the 2019 budget in case the litigation extends out
Yes, we do.
longer than we hope? That's in there.
If you don't know anything about me, you know I'm a little on the conservative side.
Yep.
So.
And then the second was just a statement, something we talked about during the committee meetings in regard to the budget. We have our pension assumed rate of return right now at 7.5%.
Correct.
Yeah, and we've talked periodically about potentially reducing that. Decided not to factor anything in regard to that this go around simply because with market volatility the way that it is and the impact that would have, now's not the time to look at decreasing that rate of return, but that remains on the drawing board as we go forward.
But to piggyback off of that, one of the reasons that we were comfortable doing that is because we're making these extra payments.
The extra payments.
So rather than make it part of our minimum municipal obligation, we're just doing it voluntarily.
Yep.
So that's part of the reason we're doing it. And also, we had a defined contribution meeting that we're going to incorporate into our pension meetings going forward as well. Because our new employees are going to enter into the defined contribution plan, the new hires, so we want to make sure that's managed well as well. Any other questions? These are good questions.
I have a comment. It's really great to see that this year we spent a lot of money on capital expenditures, right? Just kind of getting our operations and our airfield just back from, underinvestment over the previous years. But next year, it looks like we're putting a lot into human resource and productivity improvements and training of employees and administrative efficiencies with software and things like that. That's great. Let's see if we can figure out down the road, how do we measure the ROI on that? Because we can obviously measure the capital expenditures on a truck, on a, road paving, et cetera. But let's see if we can figure out how to measure the productivity gains that we're getting from the ROI that we're investing in the human resource, which is probably some of the most important resource we have. But that's for another day, but it's great that we're investing in our people now. But down the road, let's just figure out how do we do an ROI analysis on that as well.
Great question, Eddie. And one of the things that we didn't do is we didn't include any savings on these things. So we're anticipating they will save us money, but again, to your point, we should save some money.
And you'll see that along the way.
Yeah, but
Right
we would
now,
like to
it's
know
hard
what
to
that rate
project
is.
that.
But we didn't for us, conservatively, we didn't assume that we're going to save any money, but again, great question. Any other, oh,
And
go
you're,
ahead.
just to confirm that your conservatism applied to the revenue side as well.
Yes, I tend to be a little on the conservative side across the board. So you see how they all look at me cross-eyed? That should tell you enough right there. Any other questions?
Great job.
Thanks, Todd.
Thank you.
Good work. John, Eddie, good work. Okay. Can we get a motion for the approval of the 2019 operating budget, please? Second. Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay, item 2, CIP.
Yeah, I'll turn that right over to
Ryan?
Ryan to do a CO review on that.
Thank you. So, similar to what we went through last month at the committee and the board, just wanted to go through some of the highlights with the capital for 2019 and to kind of dovetail on what Todd mentioned with some of the assumptions and conservative approach. So, all of our projects included an average about 10% contingency to make sure we're covered for any unexpected issues we run into. Big thing we did this year was we did the capital budget was built upon the cash flow that we update monthly, but we included the recent schedules, ideal timeframes, and other pieces to make it as realistic as possible to give us the true total cost numbers. Other piece too here, briefly I'll go through, we updated and simplified the process. We really put a focus on the grant, major, and recurring capital projects, really where we're spending the most of our money on. As well as breaking down the departmental projects to make it easier internally to manage, but then also to show the board some of the areas we're spending money on versus department pieces. Next one. As we've been talking about, investing in our infrastructure, you can see the last couple of years that number has been going up, and it's something that we continue to do and manage on a daily basis.
Yeah, Ryan, those numbers are our expenditures, not the state grants and matches, right? Or does that include state grants?
That, I believe that was just ours.
That was just ours?
Yep.
Okay, yep. Because we put in more than 8.9 million
Correct.
in capital expenditures this year. Okay.
Correct.
A little bit more.
Yeah. So, and to that point, that's why, as we've been going through, we've been refining the process of what we're showing. So, here's basically the FAA and state grant projects that we have for 2019. You can see the total cost. We've included professional services in there, which has always been baked into the number, but we wanted to make sure, being transparent, we're showing what is included. Again, we're showing the contingencies as part of that, but as Todd mentioned, the two big numbers, I mean, you can see right here is the first construction phase, the runway rehabilitation, and finalizing the construction for Hangar 11. So those are two big numbers that, obviously get us to the grant on the 34.4 total million side. Next slide, please. And then the other piece of that sheet is the major non-grant projects. A lot of those on the top are already in progress. Others will be coming online next year. But again, you can see where the totals fall, which match up with the cash flow and the total cash side, what we're getting from grants, our share, and again, the contingencies to help us through some of those pieces. Again, we're included reoccurring projects. We're talking about a lot of pavement that we have to do, continuing to do that on a yearly basis. Again, we mentioned software updates, computer, technology is changing by the minute, so we got to stay on top of that. And then some of our allocated costs with leases and expenses. So those are really the highlights. We've gone through a lot of the projects in the past, but again, we're confident in the numbers that match with the cash flow to make sure we're covered for getting into 2019. And then in the budget packet, there's 4 different exhibits, as you've seen, of how they each break out the detail as you go into it. So any questions?
Any questions for Ryan?
Just have one. You're comfortable we have all of our sinkhole exposure covered? That's the
Much as
biggest
we
challenge,
can,
it seems,
yeah.
with the soil conditions that we have here that's caused the greatest amount of unbudgeted spending. So what we're doing so far, you're comfortable with? We
So
did
far-
increase our sinkhole due diligence, for lack of a better term.
Correct. We did and you can see in the runway, the contingency number is much higher. I believe it's higher than the 10% number because of what we found with a lot of our investigation and to make sure that we're covered out, near the runway.
Any other questions, comments for Ryan? Okay, hearing none, I would look for an approval of the 2019 Capital Improvements Program.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thanks, Ryan. Great job.
We're gonna have Brian for the next item.
Yeah, I'll just.
Okay, back, speaking of sinkholes.
Exactly right.
Yeah, there you go. Good segue. So speaking of sinkholes, what we're looking for approval on is an invoice from Grace Industries, who helped us with a sinkholes that developed in August of this year. We've been talking about it at the committee level and got more detail of what was found, but basically after one of our many rain events that we had about 10 sinkholes of varying sizes open up near the recently completed air cargo apron expansion project. Basically, some sinkholes had opened up next to the infiltration area that we had just constructed as part of that project. So we had our engineer take a look at it, brought their geotechnical engineer in to make sure that when we're making the repairs, we're doing them correctly and really closing the throat of the sinkholes at the source. All said and done, the cost to repair all that was $183,524, which that piece of the repair was not covered by our insurance. However, what we are doing, the pieces of the infiltration bed that were damaged as part of that, we're working with our insurance carrier to try and get coverage for the property damage that occurred as part of that, as part of those sinkholes. Again, work was performed as a time and material, so our engineer was on site monitoring how many truckloads they were bringing in, how many people, hours, so forth. They used about 1,000 cubic yards of fill in some of those areas, so a lot of flowable fill, but again, to date, knock on wood, we haven't had anything else in that area, so we did what we were looking to do. All of the invoices that were provided from the contractor were reviewed by the engineer to make sure it matched the bill that they were sending us, so we're comfortable with where it was. And as we mentioned before in the committee, the sooner we got to remediating the sinkholes, the better, because as we were looking at how we were going to address it, more had opened up just because of the voids that were still open. So in the end, it could have been a lot worse if we actually waited a little bit longer. So again, looking for approval for that $183,000 invoice.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Great.
Thanks, Ryan. Don't let that happen again. Okay, we're going to go into executive session. Before I ask for a motion, Judge, did you want to discuss
The
what?
executive session will be to discuss potential grants of agreements with regard to purchase or lease of real estate, and also potential grant of an option with regard to the purchase or grant of real estate that qualifies for an executive session. In addition, during the executive session, I will report to the board on the current status of pending litigation. That is litigation against the City of Allentown regarding the stormwater matter.
Okay, thank you. May I have a motion, please, to go into executive session?
So moved.
Second. We have a second. Ron, okay. Okay, welcome back. We are out of executive session, and we have 3 items we're going to seek approval for here. The first one is the approval of the Rockefeller Hanover Township Purchase and Sale Agreement. And Eddie, you have some language.
Yep, so to the board, I move that we approve the Rockefeller Hanover Township Purchase and Sale Agreement as presented by staff, subject to the approval of legal review and finalization of the agreements to be approved and executed by the executive director.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
So second motion, I recommend we approve the Rockefeller access easement as presented by staff with the approval subject to legal review and finalization of the agreements to be approved and executed by the executive director.
Second. All in favor? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you.
One more. I move that we approve the amendment to the Rockefeller East Allen Township Purchase and Sale Agreement as presented by staff with the approvals being subject to legal review and finalization of the agreements to be approved and executed by the executive director.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Okay. That wraps up the Business Development Finance Committee portion of the agenda. Next, Executive Committee, I guess that's me. Approval of the LNAA bylaws amendments. And I'm going to let the judge walk through this just because I found out at the Executive Committee I wasn't too good with Roman numerals. Slide rule, metric, slide rule, and Roman numerals. 3 deficiencies in my high school background.
These are bylaw amendments. We've discussed the amendment to Article 12. The committees, Mike Dowd, you had made a proposal to amend that, and Mike, do you want to state briefly what?
Yeah, I think so my bias in bylaws and so on is they should be as simple as possible. We looked at this point of, I think we're looking more at functions that need to be required rather than committees that need to be required, and we should really allow the president of the authority to have discretion in appointing committees as long as the functions as listed there are maintained.
And the amendment to the bylaws would provide there are 2 standing committees, the executive and nominating committee. The chair would be able, at his or her discretion, be able to appoint additional committees as needed. And there were 2 suggestions about changes in the language last time we met, and I made those suggestions. One was from Board Member Lozano about providing the media pass chairman would be a member of the executive committee if available. That's been added. And then Board Member Reedman said that he wanted to have language stricken that required board members to serve on committees as appointed, and that has been accomplished as well. That's out of there now. And I deleted a reference in the nominating committee's function to nominating a slate of officers, so there's no confusion about that there's a requirement of a slate being proposed. So that's the status of that. Member Dowd, you moved your adoption of this.
So I'll move the adoption, yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion?
Is this on Article 12?
12, yes.
My question is this. Throughout Article 12, it uses the word member municipality. And I discussed this with Judge Freeberg, and he referred me to Article 4, where it's written the counties of Lehigh and Northampton shall be known as member municipalities. I don't look at counties as municipalities. I look at counties as being made up of municipalities. So what I'd like to propose is to change Article 4, 5, 12, and 14 and say the counties of Lehigh and Northampton shall be known as member counties, so that it would say throughout each of these articles where it's stated, instead of saying member municipality, member county. Because we are appointed to serve a county, we're not appointed to serve a municipality. We all live in municipalities, but those municipalities make up our county. I don't know why that language
I'm not
is
sure.
there.
We're a municipal authority, right? So
That's why my question was with the judge. I don't understand why we're member municipalities and not member counties.
Term member municipalities has been in the bylaws forever, as far as I know.
Well, why?
Predates me, because that's the way the board drafted it. If you want to change the language, I suppose it can be changed, but...
It doesn't make sense to me.
Well, it does, given the definition of what a member municipality is. It's a county of Lehigh and a county of Northampton. I'm not going to take a position on it. It could be, you could use your language if you want, but the language as it currently exists is, I think, acceptable too. It's up to the board as to what you want to do.
I'll throw it out there that I would like to amend the counties of Lehigh and Northampton shall be known as member counties. Because I think we're appointed by counties and we live in municipalities.
Is there a second?
And that's for Articles 4, 5, 12, and 14.
We're incorporated. I don't know. We can't do that. I don't think we can do that.
Why?
Because I don't think we can amend, I'll defer to the judge, but we're amending these bylaws with these articles which have been presented in the appropriate timeframe. I don't think we can add modifications to prior articles.
I think you're right, we would have to
Redo
go
the
back and
60-day
redo the whole
process.
thing to include new language.
Yeah.
So, I don't know, what's the sense of the
I
board?
would say respectfully, Glenn, if it's okay with the solicitor, it's been there, and it's, in fact, we are a municipal authority ourselves, I
just don't like the language.
would just say we stay with the status quo, just take the vote on the amendment as it is.
I think Mike's right, I don't think we can act on it today, we'd have to go back through
We'd have to go, but
the
be new
process.
language, yeah, you're
So that
right,
may be
Michael.
something, Glenn, we do, because we have to review the bylaws periodically, that we tackle that with the next
We put it in the
review.
parking lot as, something we want to consider at the next time.
Yeah, that's
But
what I'm
I hate
thinking.
to forego all this work.
Yeah.
Hey, Glenn, I don't know that there's a second, but do you want to just revisit this later on? Because, I mean, if it's just language and nomenclature and we can fix it and make it better, why not? But we don't want to hold up the process
Yeah, I
now.
don't have a problem
okay.
at all with changing
It's
the
just
language.
it's just a matter of changing one word.
Okay.
If in the future you want to make that motion, we bring it back before the board, it can be changed in the future.
I think so,
you know,
yeah.
In a month, 2 months, 3 months, whatever. if
Maybe
you
in
want.
another meeting.
Yeah.
Get another meeting, yeah.
Okay.
This way we'll move this now and then we
Okay,
can
I don't have a
revisit it.
problem with that.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Is there, well, let's take a vote on this. All those in favor of the proposed amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Is anyone not opposed? Passes unanimously. The next one is the fiscal amendment, and John Hayes had proposed that. There was some discussion last time. John, do you just want to review that and make a motion to adopt it?
Absolutely. In Article 14 of the bylaws, it talks about the authority vested in the management team of the airport authority to expend funds. And the language is very restrictive in regard to unbudgeted expenditures, which can happen. There can be issues in regard to life and property. There can be critical but non-life and property issues. If I remember correctly, Todd, there is a resolution that was passed at some prior board that authorizes up to $11,500 or something of that nature.
That's correct.
But it's not in the bylaws, and the bylaws, again, are very restrictive. So I propose that we change it to add two categories of unbudgeted expenditure authority vested in the executive director. They're covered in new paragraphs 8A and 8B. The first category is 8A. And this is the persons in jeopardy of physical injury or authority property in danger of significant damage or destruction, that we vest in the executive director the authority to expend airport funds reasonably required to protect life and property, and that the executive director shall notify the board of governors as soon as is reasonably practical. The second, 8B, is in the event of a critical but non-emergency situation, that in the opinion of the executive director requires an immediate response, so that funds may be expended in that scenario as well. 8B would be covered, though, by a separate resolution that we would hopefully vote on and pass, setting a dollar amount cap on expenditures in that category, also requiring reporting to the Board of Governors as soon as practical as well. So that we have, in 8A, again, that's the life and property clause where whatever it takes, that the executive director determines with reporting, and then 8B is critical but not emergency with a cap. We obviously need to approve this before we would approve the cap, but my thought process in terms of that cap for the first year would be a $50,000 cap, and we see how it works. I think in the overall operations of the airport, I think that's a good starting point, and we can certainly adjust it in future periods if we so choose.
Second.
Is there a second to the amendment?
Frank, second.
Any discussion?
Sorry, just to clarify, first one is no cap, second one is, we estimate we'll vote on a cap. right?
Correct.
Okay, yep, got it.
All right, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Passes unanimously. The third one is just a housekeeping change in amendment number 20. Last month, we met and changed the notice requirement to 21 days. This brings Amendment 20 into consistency with that prior vote that we amended to make it a 21-day period. So will someone make a motion to that effect?
So moved.
Second. Is there a second? John, second. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you. That concludes our work on the bylaws review.
Thank you, Judge. Okay, Tom, Director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. All right, so as John had alluded to, we continue to see good traffic numbers here at ABE and legacy carriers as well, United leading the charge with an 11% increase this past month, so very excited to see that. On Wednesday, November 14th, we did get in front of the Lehigh County Commissioners, provided an update, airport system update, and it was a very positive meeting, good discussion, a lot of good questions, and excellent comments from the group. So we were very happy to provide a very good update for the county commissioners. November 13th, this very station, ABE's Allegiant Station, won their summer 2018 performance station contest. So throughout their system, our station came in number 1. So we wanted to thank all of the Allegiant personnel, Allegiant staff here who did just an amazing job working through tight schedules and turning planes on time. And so, to Connie and all of the folks in her team, we thank them for a job well done. In terms of upcoming events, we have a number of things going on in December. You may have seen some Christmas trees on the second level if you happen to walk through there, but we're starting our Festival of Trees with 21 area schools who are going to be decorating these trees Wednesday through Friday this week, so stop back and take a look. This Saturday, we're actually having our 3rd annual Shop with a Cop. So our airport police department is always excited to get this event together. This will benefit 15 Catasauqua area school district students. So very, very neat event. December 8th is our North Pole Express flight, and that benefits 15 families with the Lymphoma and Leukemia Society, and that's also sponsored by United Express. So a little flight to go visit Santa at the North Pole. It's a wonderful time. December 10th through the 21st, holiday concert series, 11 schools, area schools, choirs, bands performing in the terminal. Some really amazing talent at these schools. Just incredible to see all the students out here. So with that, a lot of things going on for December. What isn't going on for December are committee and board meetings. So I will say happy holidays to everyone.
Thanks,
and that
Tom.
concludes my report.
Thank you. Judge, anyone for a solicitor's report?
Not for me, thanks.
Any new business? Yes, sir.
I'd like to propose under newly approved Article 14, Paragraph 8B, that we set a contingency amount at $50,000. A contingency spending resolution. Can I do that now, Judge?
This is not an amendment to the board, to the bylaws, so yes, you can do it now.
Okay. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, John, motion carries.
Yep, thank you.
Any other new business? Okay, I just want to thank everyone since we're not having a meeting next month. Great year, I feel, great results, good work at all levels, staff level, on the board, the committees, the executive committee, finance and business, new business committee, working in a great spirit of cooperation this year. It's been a pleasure. And
Thank you.
I wish everyone happy holidays and look forward to seeing everyone in the new year. And with that, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Not in favor?